Hebrews 10 verse 23. Hold fast. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering. For he who has promised is faithful. Hebrews has just brought us inside. The door that once stood shut has been opened by blood. The way that once belonged to a single trembling priest now belongs to the whole redeemed people. We have been summoned to draw near, not as spectators peering in from a distance, but as worshipers welcomed into the very presence of God. Yet the moment the soul hears the word approach, another word soon follows from the ache of ordinary life: endure. Because there is a kind of spiritual whiplash many believers know well: Sunday's clarity followed by Monday's pressure, a season of sweetness followed by a long stretch of dryness, a bright beginning followed by a dim, demanding middle. And it is in that middle that the grip can loosen, not always through loud rebellion, but through quiet erosion, slower prayers, softer convictions, a shrinking confession, a hope that once burned like a torch now flickering like a wick. So Hebrews gives us the second great let us. Not merely to enter, but to remain. Not merely to begin, but to continue. Not merely to taste hope, but to hold it fast. And strikingly, the writer does not first tell us to search inward for stronger resolve. He directs our gaze outward, to the promiser, to the God whose character steadies every trembling saint. Hebrews 10 verse 23 calls believers to a steady, public grip on the Christian hope, unyielding under pressure, because perseverance rests not on our strength, but on the faithful, unchanging God who has promised. First, the confession we hold, the confession of our hope. The wording of the verse matters. The confession of our hope. The Greek word for hope is elpis. It is not wishful thinking or fragile optimism. It is faith leaning forward, faith taking what it knows of Christ's finished work and stretching it toward God's promised future. As several commentators note, hope is faith's forward reach, faith's daughter, faith refusing to let tomorrow be governed by appearances. And Hebrews insists that this hope has a confession, homologia. That is, hope is not merely felt, it is spoken, not only held inwardly, but acknowledged publicly, in word, allegiance, and life. For the early Christians, this confession was bound up with baptism, the moment when loyalty was declared and identity named. It was costly language in a watching world. And Hebrews assumes that the confession once made is meant to be the confession kept. This is why the writer says our hope, not my hope. Perseverance in Hebrews is never imagined as a solitary achievement. The repeated "let us" reminds us that endurance is a shared vocation. The church confesses together, not because every member is equally strong, but because the same hope holds them all. Notice the sequence. Hebrews has just spoken of approaching God in full assurance of faith. Now it speaks of holding fast the confession of hope. These are not rivals. Faith looks back to the cross and says, "It is finished." Hope looks forward to the consummation and says, "He will finish what he began." What we hold, then, is not vague positivity. It is gospel-shaped expectation, the settled conviction that the crucified and risen priest will not fail to bring his people home. Second, the grip we maintain, hold fast without wavering. The command itself now comes into view. Let us hold fast. The verb is katekamen, to seize, to grip firmly, to keep hold under pressure. This is not passive language. It is not the image of drifting on calm water. It is the picture of fingers tightening around something precious as the wind rises. Hebrews has already warned about drift, the slow, almost imperceptible movement away from what is solid. Here, drift is answered with grip. And the writer adds a crucial qualifier, without wavering. The word is aklines, not bending, not leaning aside. It describes a straight path that refuses to tilt under shifting ground. This does not describe emotional numbness. It does not deny fear or fatigue. It describes directional stability. The heart may tremble, but it does not turn. The knees may shake, but they do not bow to another Lord. Hebrews assumes pressure. There are side winds that push at the soul, public scorn, private doubt, disappointment, Delayed answers, sheer weariness. The letter does not pretend these wins are imaginary. It simply refuses to let them become decisive. So holding fast is not heroic self-sufficiency. It is the deliberate refusal to loosen the confession when the world grows loud. It is the soul saying, again and again, I will not trade tomorrow's kingdom for today's relief. Third, the rock beneath our resolve. He who promised is faithful. Then, with quiet decisiveness, the writer gives the reason. For he who has promised is faithful. The grammar itself preaches. The weight of perseverance is moved from the believer to God. The word, pistos, does not merely mean sincere or dependable. It is covenant language. God is faithful because he is true to himself, unwavering in what he has pledged. And what has God promised? Hebrews has been answering that for 10 chapters. A priest who does not die, a sacrifice that does not need repeating, a covenant where sins are remembered no more, an inheritance that cannot decay, an oath-backed hope secured by God himself. The cross stands as public proof that God does not break his word. If he did not spare his son, he will not abandon the people purchased by that blood. This is why perseverance is never meant to be a private myth of willpower. The deepest anchor is not the believer's grip, but the promiser's faithfulness. The soul learns to say, my strength is thin, but his promise is not. My feelings fluctuate, but his covenant does not. Reflections for today. First, Hebrews 10 verse 23 exposes how easily hope can be replaced with survival. Many believers do not stop believing the gospel. They simply stop expecting it to matter. Life becomes about managing disappointment rather than awaiting fulfillment. But Christian hope refuses to let the present moment become the final word. It insists that the story is longer than this chapter. Second, the call to hold fast without wavering names a modern temptation that often goes unnoticed. The pressure to soften allegiance in exchange for comfort. Sometimes faith loosens not because someone threatens us, but because the world offers us a quieter, easier life for a quieter confession. Hebrews calls the church to a hope that stays straight, even when the road tilts. Third, this verse gently dismantles the habit of measuring faith by emotional steadiness. Many believers assume that strong faith feels consistently confident. Hebrews redirects us. Stability is not found in inner weather, but in God's character. When assurance feels fragile, the gospel does not demand a performance of confidence. It offers a person to trust. Finally, Hebrews reframes weakness itself. The verse does not shame trembling hands. It tells them where to rest. Perseverance is real, costly work, but it is never solitary work. The believer holds fast because he is being held. The confession may feel costly, but it is secured by a promiser who cannot lie. Conclusion. Hebrews 10 verse 23 is a single sentence, but it drops like an anchor into deep water. It tells us what to hold, how to hold, and why holding is possible at all. We hold the confession of our hope, not vague optimism, but gospel certainty. We hold it without wavering, not bending under pressure or fatigue. And we hold it because beneath our resolve stands an immovable foundation, the faithful God who has promised. So when the weak grows loud and the soul feels thin, this verse speaks with quiet authority. Hold fast, because you are not ultimately holding yourself together. You are being held by the God who has staked his name on bringing his people all the way home. Amen.